Good, welcome everybody. This is Dave Streeter. I guess I'll call this meeting to order. Not really sure how far I should go in depth on introductions, given we're all scattered and far and beyond, but got myself, Mike Backen, and of course Tyler McCarty here from ODF. And with that being said, your meetings from our spring meeting were made available for all the membership to review. If everybody's had a chance to look those over, I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes, and we can go on from there. Nobody likes them?
I move to approve.
Okay, we've got a motion from Mike Backen to approve. Any seconds? If you're gonna second, you're gonna have to unmute. Do we have any other board members in there?
Justin's on it.
Do we have any other board members that would like to second the motion?
Yeah, this is Mike Meredith. I'll second that motion.
Appreciate that. Any other discussion on the minutes? Okay, with that being said, all in favor, just please say aye.
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 Aye. Any that are opposed? Okay, not hearing any, we'll just make up our minds that passed. Without any further ado, I'll pass it off to Tyler, and I'll give him a little bit of a congratulations in his new position, and he can give us a report.
All right, thanks, Mr. President. Like Dave said, my name is Tyler McCarty. As of 5 days ago, I started as the district forester here. Also filled in over the summer for almost the last 6 months in the position. For those of you that don't know me, I was born and raised in the Valley, went to Phoenix High School. I'm really excited to be able to do this job in the place that I grew up in. And I've pretty much worked at my entire career. I've got deep ties to this community and deep ties to our forests. I grew up hunting and fishing in the woods here in Southern Oregon. And I've got a passion for fire as well. If you ask my parents, I had several experiences with fire when I was a kid, and I've always had a passion for firefighting, and knew pretty early on in my career that's what I wanted to do. So very excited, and was felt really honored to be able to lead this organization over this last summer. Over the past 20 years, this fire season stood out in my mind. We had a lot of fire potential for a lot longer duration than what we typically see, and there was a lot of other challenges as well, right? We're still dealing with COVID-19 in the workplace. And what was new this year is we were dealing with mask mandates, and then we were also dealing with vaccine mandates, which was a struggle. A lot of our firefighters, they're not afraid of the virus, but having the vaccine requirement really put some stress on our system. And so we had some unusual challenges this year, but we also had some huge successes. And I'll get into that throughout this presentation. I'll be covering kind of a fire season in review. And it's not just us. Every other agency in Southern Oregon contributed to the success, right? The Forest Service, the Rogue River 60 National Forest Service also had some huge successes as well. So I think as a fire organization in Southern Oregon, I thought it was a really great summer, and I'm really appreciative to the folks here on the district that worked their tails off all summer. So I'm gonna get up, and I gotta put the PowerPoint presentation on, and then I'll walk through it with you guys. Just stand by with us. We're working on it. It's not. Are you guys seeing that?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Still seeing a screen that says fire season overview.
Yes.
All right, so fire season this summer kicked off May 12th, which is significantly earlier than average. It ended October 20th, and then we were able to release slash burning on October 25th. Altogether, the 2021 fire season lasted 161 days. And if you look back to 2020, it was a little bit shorter. I think in 2020, we started May 1st and ended in November. And then compared to 2019, it was significantly longer. So this graph, what it's showing you basically is showing you the water year, October 2020 to October 2021, as well as the red and green lines, which indicate the temperature during that time frame. The red line being what we observed this year, and the green line being what our historical average is. So as you can see, on the front end of fire season, about March, we were seeing significantly above normal temperatures from about March all the way through the end of July. When we got into August, the temperatures were actually about normal for this valley. If you look at the bars going up and down, the blue line or the blue bar is what we experienced this summer for rainfall, and the orange line is what we historically have seen. So if you look at October of 2020, we were still in fire season then. November, we were able to end fire season, and our water or our precip was about average all the way until we got to about March. Halfway through March, it actually shut off, and we started running fires at the beginning or at the end of March. And then April and May were extremely dry. We were extremely busy for that time of year. And then I want to draw your attention to June, if you can see that. June was kind of, I think, our saving grace. We got an inch of rain in June, and that kind of held off our ERCs trending upwards for a little bit and gave us a little bit of a reprieve. Then July and August, as you know, were dry like we normally see. That little blip of moisture in July was actually the thunderstorms that started the complexes to the north of us. And we received a significant amount of lightning and fires from that event as well. And then as we get into September and October, we actually had above normal precip, which was really nice. If you look at our rain for the year, or for the water year anyways, we're about 80% of normal. So this is just basically showing you Grants Pass. It's almost identical with the exception of Grants Pass typically sees more rain on average than what Medford does due to it being closer to the coast. As far as percent of average, it was about 83% of normal. So what this is showing you is your temperature, your max temperature departure from average. This slide's a little bit deceiving because it runs from May 22nd to November 21st. If you were to move that back, and I tried to find a graph that would highlight kind of just our fire season itself, I think you would see a heck of a lot more darker orange and reds if you were to move that up to about October 15th, because we were significantly above normal. But as we got into late October and November, things really cooled off. And this is showing your percent average precipitation. And this is just like that last slide, just due to where the time frames lie. We received above normal precip in late October and early November. And so it's showing that we were about average for that time period. So this is the U.S. Drought Monitor. This slide is from May 4th. So this is going into fire season. In May, we were showing severe to borderline extreme drought in our district. I want to draw your attention to that South Central Oregon piece because they were squarely in extreme drought. And as I move forward, you'll see a strip of exceptional drought move up through the east side of the Cascades in those areas that we saw big fires this year, like Cougar and Bootleg, that were fuel driven fires, and the drought definitely played into the way those fires reacted and behaved. So this is September 21st. You can see that strip of exceptional drought moving up through the central part of Oregon. And you can see now we're squarely in extreme drought here in Southwest. And I threw this slide in here because it shows where we're currently at. And although we received some precipitation, we're still in extreme drought here. And if we don't get some precip and snowpack this winter, we're going to be in those same conditions this next spring and summer. So this is showing you our ERCs for the summer, starting May 1st and running all the way through October 31st. The red line being what we experienced this summer. The blue line is what we experienced last summer in 2020. And the black line in between those two is what we experienced on average for ERCs. Basically, for those of you that don't know what an ERC is it's an energy release component, and it basically indicates what type of intensity you're going to see at the head of a fire. And it takes into consideration both fuel, live and dead fuel moistures. And so as you can see, 2021, we were significantly above that extreme threshold for a longer period of time than what we typically see. And you can, as you move across that line, you see a big dip in the ERCs. That was that June time period where we got a little bit of a reprieve. If we hadn't got that little dip in the ERCs, we would have trended above that extreme line for a really long duration. And so this is one of those things that we really look at hard when we're trying to determine when we're going to put on our regulations and when we're going to take it off. And so this next slide that I'm going to show you is going to kind of show you the decision times that we went from IFPL 1 to IFPL 2 and then back down. And then it also is going to overlay our public regulated use closures as well. And so here you can see, as we're trending in, you can see where IFPL 1 starts. We were squarely in that high threshold for fire danger. And so we're looking at a lot of things. This is just one component that we use to determine when we're going to change our regulations. And we're also looking at the weather. We're looking at current fire activity. And so we're squarely in the high threshold when we went into IFPL 1. And then we kind of dipped down, and you can see we went into IFPL 2 right about the time we were hitting that extreme threshold and stayed above that extreme threshold. And we're watching the weather, we're watching fires. We weren't getting industrial fires. And so we kind of rode that out. When as you can see that line for IFPL 3, you can actually see a dip and that was that June or that late July lightning storm that we got. And so that's one of the other considerations, right? The number of fires that we have, we don't want another one. And so that's one of the considerations why we went into IFPL 3. Yeah, our fire danger might have came down a little bit, but we couldn't afford to have another fire. And so we stayed in IFPL 3 for quite a duration, and I'll get into those figures here in a second. And then you can see we went from IFPL 3 down to IFPL 1, and you can see a pretty hard drop right at that break. And that's when we started getting some of those fall rains, which was really nice. So this is showing our regulated use and the number of days spent in each level. Several years ago, we tied our regulated use closures to our fire danger indicator board, which I think has been really successful. The public now understands that we've been doing it for 3 or 4 years now. And so they know when we go into green, they can't burn anymore. When we go into blue, they they have to shut down their power equipment at 1 o'clock. When we go to high, they have to shut down at 10, and when we're in extreme, they're completely shut down from using power different machinery. So this is the number of days we spent in each IFPL level, 78 days in IFPL 1, 30 days in IFPL 2, 53 days in IFPL 3, and I'm thankful that we did not have to go to a level 4 this year. So we have 3 stewardship foresters on the district, Doug Thackeray in Grants Pass, Ben Whalen and Nick Hale out of Medford. In Medford, they completed 131 industrial fire inspections. The reason their number is higher is because there's 2 of them, and in Grants Pass there's only 1. And so Grants Pass completed 32 industrial fire inspections. Notifications for Medford, they processed 598. And Grants Pass processed 296, which is pretty typical. We see a lot more industrial activity on the Medford unit than we do the Grants Pass unit. Medford issued 12 waivers and Grants Pass issued 7. We had 5 industrial fires during fire season and year to date. So we had 2 other fires outside that season as well. So 5 of the 7 so far this year has been related to burning and holdovers. The other 2, one was a Grouser rock strike, and then the other one was related to debris accumulation in a hot saw, a tiger cat. So 2021, we ran 278 fires for the year, which is above our historical average. So a stat fire is basically any fire that occurs on our jurisdiction that requires us to put it out. A non-stat fire is a fire on somebody else's jurisdiction. Could be the city of Medford, it could be Fire District 3 that's outside our protection, could be the Forest Service as well. So we ran 278 stat fires, 35 non-stat fires during fire season, and 1,183 NFCAs, which stands for non-fire crew action, which really isn't a good indication of what it actually is. It could be our folks going out and issuing a citation for somebody doing something they shouldn't. It could be a campfire that our folks go out and put out. So our folks are actually doing something. And that shows you the number of calls that we basically ran this year. So for the year, we're sitting at 338 stat fires, 37 non-stat fires, and 1,220 NFCAs. So one thing to note, that's 60 fires that we ran. If you do the calculation, that's 60 fires that we ran outside of fire season. That's more than half of what districts run in the state all year long. So we're busy even outside of fire season as well. And it sometimes is a struggle because we're staffed up during the summer. Those 60 fires we're dealing with permanent staff, and we're relying on our thinning crews to help us put it out, which are our thinning crews are grant funded during the winter time. So looking at our stats for the year, 278 fires, sorry, not for the year, for the fire season, 278 fires for the season. 63 of those were lightning, 215 were human caused. Looking at our 10-year average, we sit around 239 fires. 55 fires are typically lightning, so we're a little bit above average this season in lightning, as well as human caused. Our 10-year average sits at 183. This year we had 215. So we also burned 274 acres this summer compared to our 10-year average of 14,811, which is, in my opinion, pretty successful. So this is just kind of showing you what I just talked about. Our goal at ODF is to put 98% of fires out at 10 acres or less. This year we were at 97.8, so just below that bar. And I ran the numbers statewide, but this is based strictly on our fire season and the number of fires that other districts ran during that same time period, which came out to be 91.9%. So comparatively, I think we did pretty dang good. So this is showing you the causes for the fires that we ran this year. This is showing you specifically the Medford unit. The big ones for the Medford unit were lightning this season. They ran 44 lightning fires and 30 equipment use fires. Equipment use could be anything from car fires to power line fires to industrial equipment. It captures a lot of things. So it's not abnormal to see equipment use as one of the leading causes. So for the Grants Pass unit, their big ones were equipment use as well. And then you see down at the bottom miscellaneous. That was actually number 2 for the Grants Pass unit. And I actually, when I saw that number, it caused me to dig into our stats a little bit. And so looking at the stats, miscellaneous captures structure fires. There was 17 structure fires in Josephine County that spread from the structure that we had this system putting out. So that's what that is. And then number 3, I believe, was lightning. This is just summarizing the causes as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the fires of note this last summer. So early on, April 6th, after hours, this is one of those preseason fires that I talked about that sometimes can be challenging, right? Because we're not totally staffed up. This one actually occurred after hours as well when our folks weren't on. So it took us a little bit of time to rally the troops and get folks out there. Luckily, our rural partners were responding as well and beat us there. And we fought this fire clear into the night. This was a pre-green up fire and actually worked pretty well and was spotting quite a bit on us throughout the night. So we got around it that night. It was caused by multiple burn piles. Somebody torched a bunch of piles off and then left for work. And then came home to find out that he had an issue. And despite multiple homes in the area, none were damaged or lost, and I don't believe we had to do any evacuations. Like we see on most of our fires, it started in somebody's backyard and was burning up the slope away from the structures. So the Tartar Gulch fire was reported April 14th at 12:30 p.m. on industrial lands 9 miles southeast of Cave Junction. This fire was caught at 33 acres. Warm temperatures and windy conditions contributed to the spread. This one remains under investigation due to some ongoing issues that we have in the Cave Junction area. We couldn't totally rule out a potential other cause. And so this one's, we're keeping open for the time being. The Bear Wallow Ridge fire was reported April 22nd at 11:45 a.m. On industrial lands directly west of Applegate Lake. It was caught at 32 acres and was determined to be caused by a cooking fire that wasn't fully extinguished. And then the East Antelope fire. This was the first fire that occurred, or the first fire of note in our fire season, or during our declared fire season. It was reported on May 29th at 2:40 p.m. on BLM and private land east of Medford. It started on private and then burned on to BLM. We caught it at 49 acres. The cause was an unattended campfire, and it was a cooperative investigation with both us and the BLM. This was one of those fires, right? Last summer during 2020, we experienced a lot of evacuations, we experienced a lot of devastation in our communities. And this was the first fire. We were in fire season, and it was at one of those locations, right? That Antelope Creek drainage is right over the ridge from the valley. And it put smoke up in the air, and a lot of people got pretty spooled up, as well as there was homes in the area. And so I think the evacuations on this one, I think there were some lessons learned when I think somebody hit the button for the evacuations. They made a radius around that one point. And so there was a significant amount of people that got the evacuation notice that didn't need it. So we've been working really closely with our rural fire departments, as well as emergency management, the sheriff's office, to kind of clean up those evacuation processes. And I'll talk about another example down the line that actually went really well. So the North River Road fire reported on June 19th, just before 4:30 p.m. This was a wind-driven fire on that ridge line that kind of runs between Medford and Grants Pass. Has a lot of fire history. That whole ridge line is one giant fire scar. And it was believed to be caused from sparks from hot brakes on a mountain bike. And you wouldn't think that that would be capable of happening, but after some research, it is definitely possible. And so it was caught at 60 acres. It was the largest fire on the district in 2021. The Redwood Highway fire was reported July 24th at 6:30 p.m., 5.5 miles north of Cape Junction. This is right in the same area we had a fire in 2016, which was the Gold Canyon fire. This was a typical vehicle-caused fire, catalytic converter starts, multiple spot fires along the side of the road, and it burned a total of 6 acres before we were able to get around it. Luckily, it kind of stayed pretty dang close to the highway. It wasn't moving up the slope. It was kind of being kind of driven parallel to the road. And Highway 199 was closed for hours due to our initial attack activity. So July 29th through August 1st, we experienced lightning. I think it was 3 or 4 days in a row. The Applegate complex started 43 fires on the Medford unit. The largest fire was the Round Top fire, which was located 10 miles northwest of Shady Cove and was caught at 23 acres. We also had another fire to note, which was, I believe, the Buck Rock fire. That also was very challenging at the same time. And again, this was the same time that all those fires to the north of us were happening, and the ones that ended up staying on the landscape for a good portion of the summer. We also assisted on 5 USSF fires on the Rover Siskiyou and Umpqua National Forest during that same time period, as well as they assisted us on many fires as well this summer and during the complex. So the Applefoots complex, this is happening during the same time period over on the Grants Pass unit, started 23 lightning fires. The largest fire was the Bear Camp Road at 1.5 acres. And just like on the Medford unit, after we caught all ours, that they moved their resources north. They started helping the RFPA out on some of the Skyline Ridge and Double complex fires. Also to note, the Rover Siskiyou helped us out on the lower river corridor with their repellers. They took over 3 fires from us, and that helped free some of our resources up to focus on other fires, basically to the north of us on the RFPA. So the Board Mountain fire, this one started August 31st at 7:30 p.m. on industrial lands, roughly 6 miles northwest of Shady Cove. It was caused by an off-road vehicle used somebody up cutting firewood, but it was the vehicle that started it. I'm pretty positive they did not have permission to be on the property. We know who it is. Caught it at 36 acres, and it was another one of those fires where it's like, are we gonna get it or are we not? And I remember what's going, yeah, I think we're gonna get it. Which I think we had those conversations several times throughout the summer on many of these fires. And then the last fire I'm going to talk about is the Fielder Creek fire. This was reported September 7th at 5:30 p.m. It was burning on both private and BLM lands northwest of Road River. This one, as our engine rolled up, they indicated that structures were threatened. It was burning in people's backyards. But we were really successful. One of the things that we had going for us on this is the topography and the wind didn't align. And so that was a huge help. It started on the front end of a frontal system moving in, a cold front moving in. And so the winds were really gusty, structures were threatened. One of the things that did help us and help the rurals protect those homes is this is in an area where ODF administered a fuel reduction program. And so a lot of those backyards were pretty well manicured, which helped. And the cause of this one, we know what started it, but it's not at a place where we can release the cause yet. So I'm going to talk about resources that we utilized this summer. So detection, I got to tell you, I was I was the first person to put a camera up here. I led the project back in 2008. The first camera we put up was on Talabox Mountain. I was not a big fan of the detection, these detection cameras to start. But as we have been adding cameras over the past 10 or 14 years, however long it's been, I'm a huge fan and I'm a believer now. If you look at that, so our detection center confirmed that we had 265 fires on landscape at some point in time this summer. And that's important, right? Because as a firefighter, as you're responding to a fire, just knowing if there's a fire there or not is huge. When we get a call, back in the day, you didn't know for sure unless the lookout was seeing it. We've added so many cameras now that if there's smoke in the air, we're usually seeing it. And so I want to draw your attention to that initial detection, 66. I look back over the last 20 years, even when we had lookouts, and we never had numbers even close to that. We're beating the general public to fires like on the edge of Grants Pass. And so it's huge. Like our detection system has gotten to a place where it's extremely effective. So we had 150 secondary detections. So that's when the public reports a fire, our folks are able to get in and confirm that, yeah, we got a fire, give us eyes of the smoke and what they're seeing, which is good intel for the fire managers. It's also good intel for the folks that are responding. And one of the cool things that we're doing in our detection system is that anytime a smoke is spotted, they live stream it. And so the fire managers and even our cooperators are able to get on and see what that smoke's doing, which is extremely helpful. It helps us make decisions early on, which ultimately keep fire smaller in the long run. So currently we have a total of 15 camera sites on the district. We added 2 this last spring, one on Isabel Mountain and one on Onion Mountain. And then Biberstadt also became a permanent tower. We had it on a temporary tower up until last spring. A couple of other things to note is our detection program is being seen by other agencies as providing value to their organizations. There's some interest from Fire District 3 to create an intelligence center, which our detection system would be a part of. And so I'm looking at that, and I'm also thinking there might be other opportunities. As a district, we've talked about combining our dispatch centers for the last several years. The main thing that's holding us back from doing that is we don't have the facility to be able to do it. Our Medford Center is already full. Our Grants Pass Center is full to the brim. And so really we need a different location. So I'm looking at that as a potential partnership moving down the road, but it's early on right now, just in the discussion phase. One other thing to note about detection is if you've heard about Alert Wildfire, it's a program, and I don't know where it originated. It's big in California. It's basically a crowdsourcing app that based on the number of views of people getting on and looking at a certain image, it triggers an alarm to alert wildfire, which then identifies if there's a fire or not. And so that's coming into town. Our Rogue Valley Council of Governments is working on putting, I think, 12 cameras up in the 2-county area. And so my main concern with that is that we could potentially be receiving more calls into our dispatch centers about fires that we already know about. So we're working closely with RVCOG to ensure that those cameras are going up in locations that enhances our detection system here in Southern Oregon and isn't duplicative. So we'll just see how that shakes out looking down the road. So aircraft, we staffed the Medford Air Tanker Base with a couple of severity funded positions. This year we had Tanker 101, which was a next gen air tanker. And I'll get into a little bit more detail about that in another slide. We also had our Air Attack Recon platform, which was 1.5 kilo. It was a fixed wing Cessna. And then we had 2 Type 2 helicopters, one on Medford, which was our exclusive use and district funded, and our Grants Pass unit Type 2, which was severity funded. And then we had our Type 3 out of Medford, which is our Helitac platform. So Tanker 103, they started the season on June 25th in Central Oregon, then moved to Medford mid-July. It was the first year that we had a next generation air tanker. So it's federally carded, it can fly our fires as well as Forest Service fires. The old DC-7s, those could only fly on ODF fires. We could fly them on federal land, but ODF land had to be threatened and we would be paying for it. So this is good for both us and them. More than 103 hours were flown. It's the highest amount since 2013, and they dropped a total of 380,000 gallons of retardant. The contract ended on October 3rd. The one downfall to this tanker this year is that it was only available 6 days a week. I think that was due to pilot availability.
Pilot work rest.
But extremely fast, is able to get around anywhere in the state from Medford really, really quickly. And then we had our air attack, 1.5 kilo, district funded, started June 30th and left the district on September 20th. Flew a total of around 70 hours for a total of 48 missions during 38 days, basically. So we had a different contract with a different vendor. Because of some federal carding issues and Cessna's, that our contract was no longer valid. And this happened in late spring, which wasn't enough time for us to turn around and put another contract out. And so we chose to go with a call when needed platform, which was still not carded. And we're gonna have to make some decisions. If the federal system doesn't change at all, we're gonna have to look internally and figure out if we want to spend more money to get a carded platform. So that's what it's going to cost as we move down the road. Anything else to add on that, Lee?
Nope. No, and I would say 66 hours is really light, but we only had the one lightning event. Most years we're up in the mid 100s, almost 200 hours for this platform.
So helicopters are type 2 district ship. That's our exclusive use here out in Medford, 468. Flew a total of 76 hours on 50 missions. And our type 3 helitac ship, 4 Alpha Fox, flew a total of 71 hours on 57 missions. And then the Grants Pass severity ship flew 38 hours and completed 232 bucket drops. I don't have the stats, or didn't have the stats on the number of fires they actually flew. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our Helitac program, and those of you that received the email from me last night should have a one-pager that goes into detail about the benefits of our Helitac program, the uniqueness of it, on how it's funded, and how it benefits not us here, not only ODF locally, but our regional partners, as well as the statewide program as well. The 4 Alpha Fox was provided by Brim Aviation and Ashland. They completed 250 passenger transports, spent 50 days engaged on incidents over the 87-day contract period. And they also did several search and rescue missions this summer. And you're probably wondering, why is ODF doing search and rescue missions? Well, 4 Alpha Fox and Brim Aviation, they've got a contract with the Sheriff's Department. It's a really good working relationship. If that ship's available and we're not flying fires, the sheriff's office can hire them, and they're the ones paying. They basically come off our dime and they move over to the sheriff's. We send our folks to help, which is good. It keeps them engaged and keeps our folks active. It also is a great partnership because we lean on the sheriff's office every time we have an issue with somebody out in the woods. And I think it's been a really great program. So they helped actually find somebody this summer that was lost up in, I think, Sky Lakes, right?
Yep.
So our Helitac program is a cooperative effort. It's 3 positions are funded through the district, 2 are funded through severity, and then we bring in 2 people throughout the summer, right? We brought in 10 different people throughout the state to get them trained up. When they left, I think all of them had got their helicopter crew member task book signed off. They completed 26 training missions. So they completed 13 aviation task books, and they advanced in a dozen others. And so it's a really cool program, and it benefits not just us here locally, but like I said, we're training folks up around the state, which help contribute to that large fire program, right? Because we're going to need those folks when we have a large fire on the landscape down here or other parts of the state. As well as we used all kinds of other aircraft around the state. I want to give a special shout out to the Forest Service, their Type 1 that they have. I think they had more than one at one point.
Mm-hmm.
They had a couple of different Type 1s staffed here locally, which is a huge help in IA. Sometimes call when needed. It takes a little bit when we order a helicopter, but when Forest Service puts one on their dime, it's ready, available, ready to go. It makes a huge difference. We also are continuing to advance our UAV program. Unfortunately, we lost one of our pilots this summer. He chose to move out of state due to some vaccine mandates that came down the pipe, which was his decision, but it was still sad to see him go. Chris James, who was our detection center lead and kind of built our detection center to where it's at now, decided to move on to different pastures. We also added IR capability to one of our drones this year and flew it on 4 different fires. And as well as we utilized the Rogue Reconnaissance, which is a local contractor for IR mapping on some of our fires this season. So normally I wouldn't talk about vehicles, I think during this PowerPoint, but I want to highlight that 1.3 years ago, we were in a cost containment mode. And so we put off ordering vehicles, and now we're having issues during the pandemic, trying to procure vehicles. So I just want to put that on everybody's radar. A lot of the systems that we normally order through the government ordering processes are shut down, and they're not taking orders. And so what we're doing is we're going out and trying to find them on lots, which is causing us to spend more money. So I just want you to be aware of it, that we are spending more money than we typically do, but it's of necessity because we're behind on our replacement schedule. So we actually picked up 3 new Ram 1500s recently that we found on lots. And these were actually funded through SB 762 funds. So they're not coming out of the district budget. And we're still trying to source several other vehicles, a Dodge 2500, a couple of half tons. We're waiting on an international cab chassis that was ordered, I think, a year ago, as well as a Ford Bronco, which is an overhead rig. We're bringing on a new auto tech through Senate Bill 762. So we're looking for a rig for that individual who hasn't been hired yet, as well as we're scheduled to replace 3 engines this year as well. So 2021 training, our fire school ran from June 1st through June 25th, and we got a total of 25 employees, new employees who had no fire training through that academy. We also completed 45 task books, 26 on the Metro unit, 19 on the Grants Pass unit, and we also helped facilitate the Rogue Interagency Training Association's Wildland School. This allows us to kind of integrate into that structural system and help train them how to do wildland fire suppression. A lot of times they don't get the opportunity to do air operations because we're the ones that are typically running those operations. But if they want to advance in the wildland system, they have to have that experience. And so it's a good opportunity for us to help train them, and which overall increases the fire suppression system here in Southern Oregon. So I'm going to talk a little bit about personnel. We've got a bunch of new employees, and we've got a bunch of folks that are working in job rotations, as well as we got a bunch of positions that we have to fill. So Karen Jarrett, who's in the room in the back, as of a couple of weeks ago, she accepted our district business manager, filling in behind Darcy Castleberry. Chloe Lindgren was hired, I think, last week or the week before as well. She's our new IT GIS individual. Tobias Beavers, who's been around a little bit while, but he promoted into a permanent position as our ISS2 detection lead. So he's the one leading our detection system now, or detection center. Chris Holmes, who's a long time forest officer for us, and he's got a knack for wrenching on things, is moved into our heavy equipment mechanic position. He's been in that for about a month and a half now, and doing a great job. Misty Schultz, who's the wife of Tyson Schultz, who's one of our radio techs, she accepted a position as a permanent dispatcher in our Trans-Pass Dispatch Center. And then Chelsea Stevens is technically a permanent dispatcher now, but she was working out of class all summer as the wildland fire supervisor, serving it behind Matt Famazzi. And then Ben Whalen is our new stewardship forester out in Medford, filling in behind Steve Wetmore, who recently retired. And so this slide is basically showing you our current org chart. It's not totally up to date, but it's pretty dang close. So everyone that's highlighted in yellow is either new to the agency or in a new position. And so that's, if you look at it, that's almost half of our permanent staff. So a lot of changes, a lot happening. And I'll talk a little bit more about the Senate Bill 762 positions and the new positions that were added to the district here down the line in the agenda. So yeah, lots of changes happening. So 2021 community events, because of COVID, over the last couple of years, a lot of the events that we would normally participate in were shut down. This year, we're starting to see some of those events come back, and we're hopeful that that continues. So this year, we were able to participate in the Williams Fire Open House, the Southern Oregon Trade Careers Expo, and then the Rogue Valley Emergency Preparedness Fair. So I think to wrap it up, I'd just like to thank all the Southwest Oregon employees here and their dedication that they had this last summer. Truly, without them, we wouldn't have had the successful summer that we had. I'd also like to thank our partner agencies. Everybody, it was a real team effort this summer. We leaned on each other. Whenever we had a fire going, the Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest was calling me, asking me what we needed. And I'd also like to thank all you landowners and the support that you guys provide us, whether it's on the fire ground or the support here in board meetings. And I think that's it. And I'd also like to throw a special thanks out to the management staff here. You're in the middle of that lightning bust. My wife compound fractured her leg, and so I had to be out for a little bit. And Matt Tomasi stepped up, filled in behind me, as well as all the other managers. Really helped the line. So that's it. Any questions?
Okay, not hearing any questions. Thank you, Tyler. And on behalf of the board, I would like to say thank you. It was an exceptional season. Things could have definitely been much worse. And we were able to get out of it with very little damage. And that's always a positive. Without further ado, I'll pass it off to Mike Meredith with a quick treasury report. Mike, are you there?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Yeah, I got a report here from Tyler here showing our bank balances. We have a CD. The association has a CD with, I believe, the Northwest Credit Union, which has matured, and the balance on that is $8,518.90. So since it has matured, I don't know whether it automatically rolls over to another one or if it just goes into our checking account. So I'll be checking on that, trying to get some answers. And then our checking account, we had a beginning balance, June 30th of $3,471.27. And we had dues income on top of that since then of $1,314.17. And we had no expenses because we had no summer tour. And I'm not sure what else would qualify as expenses to this association besides tours and such. So anyway, our ending balance is $4,785.44. So you add that all together, and we have a balance in the association of $13,304. And Mr. President, I'd like to maybe add this as an agenda item for new business, maybe discuss this a little bit, talk about possibly changing our bank. We had some issues in the spring trying to get new signers put onto that account, which is with the credit union. And then possibly some other options on what we're going to use these funds for and what kind of a balance we want to carry.
All right, thank you, Mike. Yeah, Tyler does have that subject on our agenda later on down the road here to talk about today. So definitely, I think we're all aware of the issues we've had there. Does anybody have any questions for Mike on the account? Okay, not hearing any. I'll start down some of the communication partners and let them give some presentations. I don't see anybody on the agenda from the county commissioners unless I'm missing somebody.
This is Colleen Roberts.
Okay, Colleen, if you'd like to say something, feel free.
Just listening into the recap of the 2021 season and thank ODF for being such great partners and success of putting our fires out during fire season. Although we breathe smoke from other people's fires, not from ours. So we appreciate the communication and the partnership and the report. I'll share it with the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to ODF State Forester's Office, Mike Shaw, Ron Graham.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Mr. President. This is Ron Graham, Deputy Chief of Fire Operations for the Fire Protection Division. I'll be giving you both a report from the statewide protection division as well as the Emergency Fire Cost Committee, as Tim Keith wasn't able to join. So I'll try to make this as brief as possible in the interest of all your time. Thank you, all of you, for being partners in our complete and coordinated system and hearing the report from Tyler. It's no surprise the partnership, the relationships that you all have down there that help us all be successful at the local level, with other state agencies, with federal partners, with industry, with contractors, with landowners. It's the key to success, and you guys had a really successful year. Pretty amazing numbers you guys put up. So kudos to you guys in a very safe and effective season, and a very challenging season, and it could have gone another way for sure. And we actually highlighted your initial attack success in our Ways and Means, Joint Ways and Means end of fire season summary that we're required to provide to the Ways and Means Committee. So we had a fairly significant section of that report speaking to the fact that your IA success, kept several other large fires off the landscape and really mitigated further acres and values lost as well as costs. So that was excellent. Because as you know, the rest of the state was pretty challenged at times, especially the east side of the state. We've had some significant changes here in the Fire Protection Division. Our former Chief Doug Graff accepted the position with the Governor's Office for the Wildfire Policy Director. In mid-October, he took that position. It's kind of a bit of a transition where it's a job rotation for Doug, meaning he could come back if that position wasn't continued to be funded after this biennium. So in the interim, Mike Shaw, Central Oregon District Forester, has been serving as our interim chief of protection. And I understand our executive team is going to be looking for about an 18-month job rotation for somebody to complete the rest of that for the rest of our biennium. Additionally, with that, you heard of Senate Bill 762 and some other things with our biennial budget. We were able to get our second deputy filled. Tim Holschbach, who was my policy and prevention manager, is now our deputy chief of policy and planning for the division. And Tim's been solely focused on 762 implementation and rulemaking since he's been on board. He was doing that through the emergency board funding we received as well. So Tim's been doing that for about the last 8 months or so. We're glad to have that on board, and Tim's going to be building out his staff for the rest of that policy and planning part of our protection program. Some statewide fire statistics for the 16.2 million acres that we protect, and great detail from Tyler on the district level. And I know Chris Babs will talk a little bit more about some of the statewide causes and that, so I'll steer away from that. But for our protection, we've had over 1,140 fires. We've burned over 225,000 acres. Typical, our 10-year average is 952 fires, so we're up considerably on the number of fires. And our 10-year average is now 95,000 acres burned a year, so well above the 10-year average, and a lot of that due to the bootleg and cougar fires that Tyler mentioned as well. Significantly up in our acres burned. Again, we see that continuing to trend that way across the state on all jurisdictions. With our federal partners, there was over 1,900 fires for approximately 816,000 plus acres. So we're a big part of the number of fires as usual, and about a quarter, or a third of the acres burned, which is pretty typical as well. And I always attribute that to our very efficient and safe, effective initial attack that we have. The fire season was another costly one. 2020, of course, was very costly in terms of loss, not only of life, but values and cost, but this year was significant in terms of costs and not so much in terms of structure loss and fatalities. There was one contractor fatality, unfortunately, but we didn't have any civilian loss of life. So this year we're looking at about $130 million net gross fire costs, sorry. And then when we get our FEMA recoveries and our other agencies billed, we're down to about 69 million for net fire costs. If you recall, we've got a $50 million deductible that triggers our insurance policy. So we exceeded that $50 million deductible, and we're sitting at about a $19 million insurance claim as we sit here today. That'll be significant, and I'll touch on that a little bit more. This all reflects the shift in what we've seen back in 2013. Our gross fire costs, 2013 and previous, were about 10 million a year. Now we average about 70 million in gross fire costs a year. So it's quite a change over the last decade here, and it continues to trend that way. And it's created issues with us financially, to be able to pay all those fire bills, to manage agency cash flow and take care of our other costs, and then things with the insurance policy. This year we had 3 FEMA fires. They were all east side fires, one early on in Redmond, the Bootleg fire, and then the Patton Meadow fire as well. Our FEMA criteria has changed as a result of the continued and increasing FEMA FMAG requests across the country. So basically, in short, it requires more homes, more primary homes, being in level 3 evacuations, and other factors that would constitute a major disaster to get a FEMA claim approved now. So, you can look just to the south of you guys there in California, and when you see $600 million plus fires that are FEMA fires that are long duration and costly, that's just one impact to the FEMA system, let alone all the other disasters and fires across the country. Tyler touched on COVID, and yes, we're still dealing with that. We had to implement our 2020 plans again and follow those protocols. And we had about 11 known COVID cases on our large fire incidents. So really good job once again dealing with that challenge. I talked about the insurance policy a bit, and we're right now in the process of putting together, from our standpoint, what we would like to propose and see in an insurance policy, and why we think we're still a good partner to do business with that. And we can expect probably another increase to our premium. It was currently sitting at about 4 million plus, and I think we're going to see an increase in our premium. I'm not sure if the industry will look at an adjustment to our deductible, that $50 million piece, and then the $25 million policy. Those are things that could easily be increased and adjusted for this year, given where we're at. We're about 30 million to the good in what we've paid in premium costs and what we've received in insurance claims. Looking beyond 2022's insurance policy, the industry is already hinting at some major structural changes to our insurance policy. This is a catastrophic wildfire expense insurance policy. And basically the insurance industry is telling us, look, your costs are trending so high upwards, that now. That's known cost. That's not catastrophic, unexpected costs. So we could see some structural adjustments in the future. It was really great hearing, Tyler, you talk about all those fires and the success you had. And statewide, we started seeing fires early on in March with the Bull Springs fire up in Bend. That was almost a FEMA fire. It triggered quite a few evacuations. And that kind of that ribbon of really exceptional drought was where we saw a lot of the early fire season activity take off, take hold. It didn't let up, spread all the way down into your area. The emergency board gave us some extra money in January for capacity, for mitigation, and for the severity program. They gave us $5 million to kind of capture the early fire season that we were anticipating prior to the new fiscal year, new biennium. We had exceeded and spent all of our previous year severity funds, so we had no funds to carry over from an early fire season. We spent about $3 million of that. A lot of resources were brought on pretty much starting in kind of mid-April all the way through the end of June. And I don't think without that funding and those resources, we wouldn't have been nearly as successful as we were. And then the next significant increase was through our biennial budget and through Senate Bill 762, our severity program funding was doubled. There was $5 million additional general fund added to our normal severity program to make it a $10 million program. Part of that was in response to our need to go out with a new air tanker contract, large air tanker. We also added 2 fire bosses up in the Dalles, and we were hoping to get enough funding to put on a Type 1 helicopter in Southwest Oregon under exclusive use, but unfortunately, we didn't get quite enough funding to squeeze that one in. So with that $10 million package of severity, we spent about 9.1 this year of that money. So 9.1 and 3, we spent about $12 million on severity resources for the fire season. At 9.1, we're just under the 10, so we've got a little bit of money to carry over into an early fire season, less than $1 million. It's not going to go far if we continue to see those drought conditions settle in. That's something we watch really closely, is when we see multiple years of droughts and it's intensifying. That kind of starts feeling like 2014, 15 kind of conditions when we see that. Our incident management teams were extremely busy. We deployed them 7 times for a total of 92 days. And thank you, Tyler, for taking on a team and moving up as primary IC. And I know you were extremely busy, as well as many of your staff. And I know sometimes it's really hard to maintain the district drawdown and be keeping enough people back and maintain your IA and your adequate level of protection to be successful. And then all the demands to support our incident management teams across the state. But you guys did a great job as always, and we appreciate that. And you still did phenomenal back home, of course, right? We continue to work on our master agreement, statewide operating plans, an agreement to replace our current agreement with the BIA, and then most notably the WOOP with the BLM. We've been meeting with BLM staff and internally continuously since our last contract, trying to look at ways to address the BLM's issues with funding and the ability to pay the costs for protection across the Western Oregon landscape in the ONC lands, as well as looking at ways we can maybe restructure the WOOP in the future. It's been pretty tough. We quickly tumbled to pretty much anytime you shift funding and try to lower somebody's cost, one party's cost, one public landowner's cost, that money's got to be made up somewhere else to maintain the system as it is. So a lot of that would be decisions that are well out of our hands, that would go into the legislature to decision makers at the statewide level. So we've been trying to get BLM some adequate funding. We've been trying to figure out ways that we can keep the staffing and the adequate level of protection and meet everybody's needs. Our leadership and BLM executive leadership met Friday. I don't have the report out from that meeting yet to hear what really went on, but we'll make sure we get Tyler looped into the the relevant details of that meeting and where we're going with things. We've been able to finally implement our new burn rules to get us a little bit more additional prescribed fire on the landscape. Since our smoke review, we had to kind of pause some of that due to COVID, but now in fall here, we were able to open up burning and try to get some more burning on the landscape. So we'll see where that goes. We've been working on a lot of the financial recovery stuff. We had the MGO auditors come in and do a lot of work and make a lot of recommendations around how we do business. We've implemented many of those recommendations, and we're actually ahead of a lot of them in changing our business practices and doing a lot of coordination. Again, it's very problematic when we have $130 million gross fire seasons. We're not a bank. We're not given that kind of funding up front. Historically, we've had to take out treasury loans and whatnot. And there was a time when we weren't sure we were going to be able to pay back that treasury loan on time. So fortunately, we've restructured the way we do things financially, and we're not in the situation where we're taking out treasury loans, but it's really important to get our receivables back and keep cash flow going and maintain that. And it's really challenging given the cost of fire season. We have Tracy Rolson, the district business manager out of Central Oregon District. He's working with the Financial Administrative Services Division to do some of that work that MGO recommended as well. And then in January, another one of the recommendations takes effect where the Protection Financial Services Unit will be transferring to admin services as the Protection Finance Services. And the workload will be a lot the same, but there will be a different level of coordination with our statewide financial look and the agency-wide financial look. So we're seeing how that goes. I'll close my report out with just a little bit more on Senate Bill 762. That bill overall provided over $220 million in Oregon to help modernize and improve our wildfire preparedness. Basically very similar in three key strategies, like the cohesive wildfire strategy, looking at creating fire adapted communities, lots of money for mitigation and fuels reduction, developing safe and effective response. That's money to support the severity program, increase that, and then add capacity to us, and increasing the resiliency of Oregon's landscapes, again, with more funding for broad cross all ownership fuels mitigation projects. So of course, this is built on years of hard work through different fire program reviews. The Governor's Wildfire Council worked with the state legislature and across many state agencies, and that's part of what Doug is doing in his new position, is coordinating the work of all the agencies that are involved in Senate Bill 762 and the new Wildfire Program Advisory Committee or Council that is continuing to further that work beyond 762. So as I mentioned, Tim's been doing a lot of rulemaking around identifying the wildland urban interface and developing a statewide risk map. That committee process will likely finish here in February of 2022, get finalized in June through the Board of Forestry. And then Tim will shift focus on the Certified Burn Manager program. There's a little bit of work going on with that as well, but that program likely see some interaction with the Board of Forestry in January of 2022. And then the rules presented tentatively in July or a little bit later in summer to the Board of Forestry, with a full program launch targeting fall of 2022. So I'll quickly just go through some highlights from the Emergency Fire Cost Committee. As a result of Nancy Hirsch doing the interim state forester position while we were searching for a new state forester, Tim Keith stepped back into his role as the EFCC interim administrator. Nancy will be back as the EFCC administrator on January 4th after the holidays. And then, she's going to continue to assist State Forester Cal Makamoto with some projects and transitions such as the BLM WOOP and some things like that. Ken Cummings, long-term EFCC chair, retired and resigned from the EFCC in June. Ken had been a member of the committee since 1996 and had been serving as the chair since 2007. So an incredible legacy there. And at the June EFCC meeting, EFCC unanimously selected Brennan Greltz as the new EFCC chair. And now they've filled out the membership of EFCC here recently. In September, Eric Lease from Weyerhaeuser, he's their director of silviculture and regeneration for the Western US for Weyerhaeuser. He is the new EFCC board member. So we're excited to have Eric on board and a full EFCC board. The Oregon Forest Land Protection Fund is projected to have an ending balance on June 30th of $10,782,000 and some change. EFCC's, seeing the ending balance to continue to decline. We've been hitting the maximum funding each year of 13.5 here, and that's taken a toll on the funding balance. But as we get new revenues in, of course, the fund balance will go up. But again, it's getting to be a little bit problematic running that fund balance down so close to, critical levels, and then, with new revenues coming in, just keeping us going. So there might be some changes in the future there as we continue to look at the viability of the Oregon Forest Land Protection Fund and the funding values. And I think with that, the rest of the stuff Tim had wanted to cover was things I covered on fire cost and the insurance program. So, Mr. President, that ends my report, and I can certainly take any questions.
Okay, any questions? Not hearing any. I assume that also covers the FC report. So moving on, State Larson on.
Shannon Vanderbeck is going to cover that.
Sounds like Shannon will cover.
Hi there, Shannon Vandevenner, Acting Assistant to the Area Director, and I'm going to be covering for Dave today as he's in another meeting. So I'm going to be covering for the Southern Oregon area as a whole. I'll hit some highlights, we're going to run the middle number of statistics. I'll look at the area wide. So for fire season overview, fire season started in the Southern Oregon area on May 12th with the Southwest going into fire season. And we ended at 161 days later on October 20th. So definitely a long fire season for us. One word to kind of describe our fire season this year, was pretty remarkable. So we had record-setting ERCs throughout the area, multiple days where the temperatures that we experienced broke previous temperature records. And, it was hot in Southwest, but it was like that throughout the whole area. So we really pre-cured all our fuels pretty early in fire season. We also ended up, for a majority of fire season, we had some limited resource availability for basically most of fire season, with being at a national preparedness level of 5 for a majority of it. So there was definitely a worry if we got a big fire being able to staff it. Just finding people locally was definitely difficult. Statewide, our ODF fire teams had 7 deployments, and many of those positions are filled by members of the Southwest District, as well as other areas or districts within the Southern Oregon area. So, and many of those times we actually had more than one team out. So not only was finding resources difficult, but in the Southern Oregon area, supporting those fire teams was taxing on our districts. So with all that happening, it was pretty impressive that we had so few large fires to deal with within the Southern Oregon area. So since January 1, so kind of the start of the 2021 fire season, we had 700 stat fires. 61% of them were in SOA, but the big kind of feather in the cap is, with the exception of Skyline, we really didn't have any in our SOA districts that were large and notable. So I just want to highlight the amazing work of Southwest and the other districts within the Southern Oregon area on their IA response. They kept them small this year, which is what we needed, because we didn't know if we were going to be able to get excess resources on them. So to highlight some of the keys for the success for the Southern Oregon area, the State of Jefferson agreement, in which within the area, and then also Klamath Lake District is in that, we kind of internally shuffle our resources to assist each other. So that agreement was huge in helping support IA and extended attack to try to keep the fire small within the area. Another big highlight, as Ron mentioned, was the statewide severity, the expansion, basically doubling of money available for that program. Part of that was covering the significant increase for the air tanker, the next gen air tanker, which was definitely useful for us. Ended up being a little bit more expensive than we'd hoped it would be. So like Ron mentioned, we weren't able to get that type one that was actually supposed to be down in Southwest. The preseason e-board dollars Ron mentioned earlier also helped us bring on some of our helicopters early with the early drying that we had, and keep some of our fires small and keep some of our helicopters around longer because we were able to bring them on earlier and have that funding covered through the severity program. Also, another big highlight, we had the challenges with COVID and the vaccine mandate, but overall we had decent employee retention, and we're able to keep many people around and keep our skilled workforce around. Part of that comes from that additional money with 762 and being able to keep, bring employees on earlier with that funding and keep them on longer and providing some extra capacity there outside of our typical fire seasonal employees. Another big success was we pre-signed up a lot of our IRA, majority of our IRA resources, so we didn't have to go through that process as fires were happening. And then another big thing, like Tyler noted, the detection camera system and us continuing to build capacity there has really helped catch fires early and be able to respond to them in a very timely manner before they get to a size where they'd be significantly more difficult to deal with. Again, IA was huge this year. It was important for us to keep fire small with the lack of resources, and that was just another thing to help with that. Also, our partners down there, Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest, were quick on the ball with engaging with their fires when they have them, especially when the lightning storm came through. They worked in conjunction with the district down there and DFPA on some of those border fires to get out there and keep them small and put them out. And their ability to jump on those fires that Rogue River decided to do and engage with Southwest was monumental in helping keeping some of those fires off the landscape. And then it didn't take up our resources trying to battle those as they encroached on private ground if they'd let grow to a larger size. We also had a pretty timely implementation, played out well for when we implemented different public use restrictions. And our night firefighting operations were huge as well. So being engaged on those fires throughout the night, and again, Rogue River helping with that on all those border fires and on their own, keeping them small was monumental throughout the area in helping us keep those large fires off the landscape since resources were so hard to come by, being as how the east side had so many large fires right out of the gate. Some areas that we identified for improvement, one, which it's been a discussion and it's come up several times, and having IRA resources is key and helpful, but those hand crews are too few and they get eaten up too quickly. So all districts have identified a need to try to, we see the success in the Southwest Hill Attack crew that kind of serve as a crew that can hop on a helicopter and engage in a fire. We're noticing the big issue with not having our own hand crews and the need for ODS to start to try to find some money to get our own hand crews back. Some districts used to have hand crews, they've kind of went away, but the lack of ability to secure hand crews through partner, our contractors, because they go to other fires that may have happened before us, definitely played a part on making some fires more difficult to contain. Type 1 helicopter, like I mentioned, if we would have had that on, it would have been incredibly helpful. We were able to keep them small this year, but having that additional resource would definitely be helpful. So hopefully we can find a way to work within the severity program or maybe find some more money somewhere to help get the Type 1 helicopter on, helping bolster that initial attack so that we don't lose our fires. And then really fire prevention would be a nice thing if we could. Mostly our fines are pretty small. It's kind of a slap on the wrist for someone who gets caught burning something most times. So putting some more teeth behind what we do, the district identified would be helpful to maybe make the public more aware that they shouldn't be burning a debris pile at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when it's 95 degrees out because they feel like it. And then we show up and, you know, give them a warning or a small fine is basically all we're being able to do. So putting a little more teeth behind what we do would definitely be helpful and hopefully tracking down on some burning there. So jumping just a few other highlights outside of fire season. The Senate Bill 1602 e-notification system, I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, are aware of it. Basically stage 2 of the 1602 stuff for the helicopter pesticide applications is underway. I think Ferns is pretty well set up to do it and ready to go. So that bit next step towards meeting those requirements. The private forest accord came down with some decisions. Still waiting to see how that affects the department. Really, the department has had very minimal involvement in the private forest accord, with the exception of just being asked to come and give some testimony to how things are enforced or looked at right now, how our rules stand. Another thing a note, so the state forest division chief, Liz Dent, is leaving in the near future. So she'll be leaving a gap, and ODF's working on filling that hole that she leaves behind us. Changes in employment. So our new state forester, Cal, has now joined us. Also, the last vacancy in the Board of Forestry was recently filled with Liz Apagio. And she actually comes out of the Southern Oregon area. She's going to be our representative on the board from this region. We were the one that didn't have a position representing us. Last big change, it just came out, affects the area. So our new communication system analyst 3, so that's our Hilltop radio tech for the Southern Oregon or Southwest regional area for radio, has been filled. That was previously Bill O, who retired, and he actually will be working out of Medford. Anthony Seeger, and he is, I think, joining Southwest. Tyler, is he down there right now?
Yeah, I think
Is
he
he in
showed
the
up today.
background?
Today's
Okay,
his first day.
So happy to finally have that filled. It was definitely a much needed position to get someone in there. We have a lot of work to do on our Hilltop stuff and our aging radio system. So staffing kind of shuffling within the Southern Oregon area. So new SOA district foresters, Mr. Tyler McCarty, recently selected down there. Also the Western Lane district, Link Smith recently retired, and that was filled with Ola Book, for those of you who don't know him. So transition, and actually two districts there in the Southern Oregon area. And they both started officially 5 days ago. Also, the position I'm filling, the assistant to the area director, I'm going to be stepping back to my stewardship forester role here at the beginning of the year, and there will be another developmental rotation coming in behind me. But the plan that Dave has is to have this position permanently filled by May 1st of 2022, so that we can go into our next fire season with someone in this seat permanently, and that's kind of when fire season planning really ticks up. So it's a critical time to have this position filled permanently. Also, Mike Dewey was selected as the Southern Oregon Area Geotech a while back, but I think after your last meeting. I think those, also, mentioned several times the Senate Bill 762, some positions are looking at probably working out of the area. So kind of in the area, we're looking to probably use that funding to add a training coordinator, an aviation coordinator, and a prevention coordinator. So we're in the initial stages of working on those position descriptions, but it'll be nice to bring some of that capacity to the area so we can help support the districts in those positions. Checking Dave's notes really fast to make sure I cover everything. So 3 things just to make everyone aware of that kind of came out of our recent fire season review for the area, kind of our top 3 priorities that we've pushed forward. A big one that was mentioned actually earlier in Tyler's report. So it has to do with federal carding of aircraft. They continue to change those standards for any aviation resource that wants to work for the feds. And that's starting to affect our costs and our bottom line for the additional things that they're asking for in those aircraft. So we are going to probably see costs for our aviation contracts go up as those resources are trying to meet the federal carding system as well. So we've identified that as an issue of a ballooning cost that's going to be passed down to the districts to try to keep our resources on contract. We'd also, as I mentioned earlier, the hand crews, we're acknowledging that there's an issue with getting a hold of hand crews. So looking to expand the severity program, the WPA crew down there in Southwest. They've been great at other districts throughout the summer. Where they took other people to fill those roles and train other people in other districts within the area. But definitely looking to expand that concept in the area via, just trying to get more hand crews is going to be pretty vital as hand crews are getting harder and harder to come by in the contracting world. And then the last thing that kind of came up, as I mentioned, and many of you see the cost of the radio program, and the issue is that our network is very aging. It's aging, it's falling apart. Our repeaters are getting very old, and the cost to replace them is tenfold what it was when they were put in. So trying to find the finances to shore up our aging and crippling repeater system, as it is a safety issue. And then again, the staffing to support that program. And then the other thing Dave wanted to note is he is basically hired a little while before fire season 2021. Dove into it head first, but he's really gotten his bearings now, and he's got some big duties. His priorities are getting out to the field, meeting with all you folks more, and getting around and hearing from everybody, and really starting to engage with everyone even more than he already has. And I think that's all. Those are the highlights to hit for you guys. If you have any questions.
Any questions for Shannon? Not hearing any, we'll move on to OFIC. Kyle Williams.
All right, morning. Keep grinding here. First, Tyler, sharing. Congrats on the district forester position. That's you guys are in really good hands down there. Pretty impressive team that folks have built up for SOA now. Jumping in. And the other thing is pumped up hearing about the success you guys had this summer. That's a freaking big deal. The number of fires you guys had, and to keep, especially in that lightning event, keep a project fire from happening down there. It made a massive difference, the work you guys did down there and the sharing of resources. And we're talking about that a lot statewide, trying to get other places to do better in that way. So nice work down there. I guess to jump into my update, then you've got this handout in your packets, so you can check back for more detail. I'm gonna skip across the top of a bunch of it, but just kind of rounding back on the Labor Day fires from a year ago. Obviously, significant impacts, communities, the whole 9 yards for basically the California border all the way to the Columbia. But something that came out of that last fall, we worked with the Oregon Forest Resources Institute to kind of ask a question about, all right, what about the impacts to our industry? So the timber and the milling infrastructure and all that kind of stuff. Get a closer look at that. OFRE got a contract with Mason, Bruce, and Gerard, who's a pretty reputable contractor. And they put pen to paper and started looking at those economic impacts. And I kind of just provided some highlights of what that study came up with. There was initial estimates in the neighborhood of about 2 billion board feet probably being impacted from those Labor Day fires, wood that would have been available for the market. Once MBG dove into it, it became apparent that we were south of the real number with that initial estimate, and it was more like 9 billion board feet. It was inside the perimeters of the Labor Day fires that had a moderate to high burn severity. So what you would assume as nuked. There's not all of that is on private land, right? Half of the acreage footprint for rough and dirty purposes was on federal ownerships, and they continue to be challenged with their post-fire salvage efforts. In fact, some of you may have seen that up north in the Cascades, a court just last week put an injunction on some of their roadside salvage efforts. And so 9 billion board feet impacted, but it's more like about 4 billion of that is on land that you could actually do something, at least have the management flexibility to do something. And when you really look at parsing that down, it's something like about half of that, maybe less, will actually be salvaged. So, enormous impacts. That's half of a year of an average statewide year's harvest is going to be lost through those fires. And then when you look around the corner, so what is burning up that footprint mean for available wood moving forward? And that's even scarier. Over the next 40 years, MBG estimates that we are going to lose about 115 to 265 million board feet a year. And for folks that are familiar with large milling infrastructure, that's roughly equivalent to about 2 I-5 mills. There won't be wood available for them every year for the next 40 years. So remains to be seen, what that's going to do, but pretty scary to look forward. There's some more stuff in there you can read about. And then we look at impacts from this summer's fire season. It was, from an acreage standpoint, a little quieter on the west side on ODF and private lands, but on the east side is a different story. And you guys are familiar and neighbors with the Bootleg and Cougar Peak fires and those landowners over there. They lost north of 500,000 acres in an already really constricted wood supply basket. And so that mill out in Lakeview, is in a position where their future is incredibly uncertain because of the volume of wood basket that just got burned up and the time that it takes to get trees back to a millable size in that country. There's some really concerned folks trying to figure out what to do next. You talk more about the federal effort and the infrastructure bill and all this investment that's coming out to do fuel reduction work. And if you don't have milling infrastructure in a part of the world in order to facilitate eating some of that material, you basically don't have anything. And so we'll see what happens over there. And then more on the west side, different but the same was kind of the geography of fires, right? We were back to that consistent theme of lots of fire on federal ownership and threatening to move out of their jurisdictional boundaries. And so what that meant was just a ton of time invested by private landowners and ODF staff up and down the Cascades with those fires. The Umpqua had a team in place for something like 104 days straight, an incident management team, and the level of engagement to the in briefings, the time, the cooperator meeting, all of that, and then just the mental exhaustion trying to be engaged for that long has some folks pretty burnt out. And that's a world you guys are used to living. And it has impacted some districts north of here significantly this summer. And so there's a lot of effort now turning towards how do we do it better, realizing that our fire situation is not going to get any easier moving forward. Climate change and fuel loading and all the different reasons. And so how do we share resources better? How do we engage, share priorities better, all of that. And it's things that you guys have been living and had success with this summer, trying to find a way to expand that to more of a west-wide approach as things go north. And so I'd ask you guys, Tyler, especially, keep efforting, trying to expand that and share the things you guys have learned, hard fought lessons with your partners to the north of you. And that's both state and the federal agency folks. Because you guys are doing it right. At least you certainly did this summer. And we've got to expand that to find any success in our future. Shifting gears a little bit, more of a general legislative and budget scan. We've talked a lot about 762. Some of you guys may be tracking that. And the investments Ron mentioned, north of $200 million across several agencies, and a pretty significant injection of money into the department. And Tyler, you guys will talk a little bit more about those positions and what your district is doing with them. From a statewide look, the best math we can come up with is about $18 million for the biennium worth of personnel investment is going to take place at ODF. You've heard a few of those examples, right? Area training coordinators and aviation coordinator and all that kind of stuff. Some good stuff statewide. ODF desperately needed. And it's kind of a question now of how do we pay for that long term, right? We got a $15 million one-time injection of general fund money into the ODF budget to offset those district rate increases. And it's how do we make that durable beyond just this biennium? And I don't have that answer yet. That answer doesn't exist out there, but there's a lot of certified smart people trying to think about crafting a solution for it. Because I worry a lot when you combine, just that investment. Again, we need it with things like the severity program increases, potentially losing the insurance program post this fire season. Average net fire costs of $40 million now. There's going to be some significant changes and increases in costs. And we got to be really careful about how we craft our future moving forward so that we don't break the system from being able to afford it standpoint. And that's, when you consider the wide range of, fire interval and values at risk and all that kind of stuff statewide, it's a complicated picture, but I'm leaving this marker at every one of these meetings. Something's going to change, like fundamentally has to, with the way we fund fire and the sizes of our things like the Oregon Forest Land Protection Fund and all of that. I don't know what it looks like again, but be ready and be creative. If you've got ideas, you want to get them to me or to Tyler to try and problem solve how we fund the size of the system it's going to take to move forward with our new reality of fire. I'm all ears. So anyways, continuing to move forward, in addition to the investment pieces of 762, there's some significant policy and regulatory stuff that's going to come out of that. And right now there's more rule advisory committee meetings than I can keep track of. But there's an effort to kind of reimagine how we address our landscape from a fire regulatory and policy perspective, like I just mentioned. First step of that is defining wildland urban interface and mapping risk and all those kind of things you guys have been living with for a while, but mandating that now statewide. And with that will come some future regulation around defensible space. So imagine, that what has been an advisory effort to this point will become mandatory some point in the future. Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office has been given that responsibility to carry out those regulations on the ground. So the who's going to knock on the door and say, ma'am, you need to mow your lawn. That's going to be either your local fire department or OSFM now. ODF won't be in the position of having to do that within the WUI. But you guys are still going to be technical experts on, who should have to mow their lawn and how that goes. So it's a pretty significant increase in the fire department and fire marshal's office's role in wildland fire statewide. If we do it right, the two agencies will complement each other, and the red trucks will be down there at the houses, and Tyler's folks will be up on the hill, and we'll be better as a state putting these fires out. If we do it wrong, well, we just propelled ourselves headlong into a CAL FIRE type situation. And well, they put out a heck of a bunch of good fire. It's a super expensive model. And again, depending on what happens here in the future, we're trying to avoid a super expensive model. Other stuff, Shannon had mentioned, needing to put some more teeth into ODF, the fire violation stuff. That actually is going to be formalized, and yeah, exactly, Chris. There's one of the rule advisory committees is going to take on some cross-boundary burning that came through the legislation, but we're going to, as we get that group together, use them to review the ODF enforcement policy and see if there are some tweaks and maybe some more teeth we can put into that. And so that's coming. All of that work, the regulatory, the policy, the costs, all that kind of stuff is all happening at a time where we've got a legislative body with a huge tax appetite. There's some other, harvest tax and OFRI modifications and severance taxes for timberland owners, and all of that's being contemplated at a time where we're having to, open up the pocketbook for other kind of fire specific investments. And that is making people feel pretty greedy. In the short session, we're hoping to avoid, some bigger severance tax conversations, but we know the harvest tax conversation is going to happen. And I know it's hard to track, and how are those two things different? Just know that they are. And the harvest tax is like 475 and the severance tax is significantly more than that. I won't get into any more detail than that, but anyway, we expect that conversation. Significant modifications to the Oregon Forest Resources Institute. There's a lot of legislators who are offended by the idea that there's a timber, basically a commodity commission that talks good about the things the timber industry can do for the state of Oregon. And they're trying to make that much harder for OFRI to carry out their mission. So we got February legislative sessions kicking off here in another, less than 2 months. And it's 45 days long, and it'll be hell. And we'll try and hold the ground we've got right now. Last things on my list here, obviously the Western Oregon operating plan, that BLM agreement, enormous for your district, right? From not just a budget standpoint, but just every one of those fires of significance you mentioned, Tyler, seem to have both private and BLM ownership in them. And it's not a landscape we can separate. And so trying to land in a good place for both agencies without one entity having to pick up somebody else's bill has been challenging. And we'll see what that happens over the next 6 months. And then the private forest accord, Shannon had kind of mentioned it. Not an OFIC driven process, but we do have OFIC members that were at the table negotiating that agreement, intended to achieve long-term predictability in terms of our regulatory environment, so that you kind of know for the next 50 years what your investment is going to be worth to you, and not get nickel and dimed and death by 1,000 cuts from a regulatory standpoint. If there's an initial agreement between those two parties, next steps are to go make it law. And so there will be a bill written for the short session to try and put that in place, and then a couple of years worth of rulemaking. So things like wider buffers and steep slope protections and road inventory stuff that are going to apply to all of us. It's a new future for forest practices in Oregon if it all comes together. And some significant impacts, I think, to ODF and staffing. The things that a stewardship forester knows today and is really good at today are kind of going to be taken to a whole nother level if the PFA lands, relative to some of the screening and volume of things that are going to have to get written plans and all that. And so it's somewhat of an uncertain future, but hopefully a better one if everything lands where it's headed for. So you guys can ask questions on that. I might know an answer, but frankly, it's I'm not in those conversations and kind of learning most of it along with the rest of you. So Tyler, Dave, that's it, unless there's questions.
All right, any questions? All right, thank you, Kyle, appreciate it. Moving on, keep working green. Kristen?
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, good deal. Well, I'm going to keep my camera off so that you can continue to hear me. I've got a little report here that I want to share with you all. I did want to follow up on what Shannon was saying as well. We do need more teeth. And it was interesting actually sitting in the war room, quote unquote, the Salem war room this summer for a short period of time and talking with Doug Graff. Basically, his question to me was, if you had a blank check and you could ask for anything on your prevention list, what would it be? From the engineering standpoint to enforcement to education, what do you need? And write all of it down. And so I hit the highlights. And what ended up happening was that made it into the chair of the Board of Forestry's hands on the way to a fire. And apparently that information was shared with some other legislators and folks on the board. And so it turned into a prevention policy work plan that will be due to the Board of Forestry in the June of 2023. So Tom and I will be working on that. I think it's important for us to look to what our neighbors to the north and south are doing for prevention, maybe what the other 17 Western states are doing, and see if we can try to synthesize something that would work here for Oregon. But I definitely agree that, you know, what we've been doing here in Oregon for a long time is just a slap on the wrist when people are lighting fires deliberately in the middle of summer. So there needs to be some higher penalties for that. And we're ready to see what that looks like. So obviously we had a very challenging fire season. Just looking across the state, we were already above average for the number of human caused fires even before fire season began. So we entered fire season with those challenges ahead of us already. And so where we ended up, at least ODF statistics statewide, we had 923 human caused fires that burned about 57,000 acres. And a lot of that was on the east side, northeast. I actually had to rub my eyes and make sure I was reading the numbers correctly for Southern Oregon area, because the amount of acres burned was so, I mean, it was just so low. I was just shocked. I was like, this can't be real. But kudos and congratulations to your crews down there for an incredible initial attack and keeping those numbers low. It was really, really good to see that. Statewide, when you look across all lands, all jurisdictions, we had 1,057 human caused fires burning about 152,000 acres. And then when you compare that with our neighbors to the north, they had 1,589 human caused fires burning about 148,000 acres. So Washington had 532 more human caused fires than Oregon did, which I find interesting because they enact tighter restrictions than we do. Again, that was kind of my look this summer to see what our neighbors were doing. And they also have less acres in high fire risk categories than Oregon does. So not that I'm competitive, but I am kind of. Just to see what's working. So statewide, I'm going to say that what we're seeing is pretty much mirroring what Tyler was talking about earlier. Equipment led the fire cause categories, vehicles being the top cause in that category, particularly during the summertime, followed by power lines. And that's a tough challenge for me. when we look to engineering and enforcement and education, what's going to work for vehicles? That one is a challenge for me. And power lines, I mean, that's an easy one. You kind of know who you have to go talk to for those, but vehicles tends to be a challenge for us. And then that was followed by debris burning, folks not setting them up correctly. They weren't staying with them and they were burning during poor conditions. And then obviously they weren't putting them out completely. And then for us statewide, in the third leading cause, it was number 2 for you guys, but it was number 3 for us, was that miscellaneous category. And same thing, Tyler, it was burning buildings that were really, really high in that last miscellaneous category. So moving on, good news is that the Smoky Bear plate happens to be one of the top 3 issued plates in Oregon, and that allows us to do some really interesting and creative things. I want to say thank you to Natalie for all of your work and assistance with the TV stations down there. Interestingly enough, TV remains the preferred source for local news, and weather is the highest watched segment of local news. So there was a natural fit for us there to work with stations from the northern border down to the southern border and across to the east side. And so we worked with the chief meteorologists on all of those top watch stations, and they did some 15-second spots, some 30-second spots for us. Down in Southern Oregon, they wanted to go after the professionals and get them on camera, and Natalie obliged. I just can't say thank you enough, Natalie. You're such a pro. Great work on that. I hope you guys were seeing those down there this summer, and our sponsorships for the weather segments. That was a new thing for us, a new effort this summer, and it was thanks to the plates that we were able to do those sponsorships with the station. So some good work there. And then another thing too is that we haven't had the funding to be able to reach the Portland metro area market. That was always out of reach just due to funding, but now that we've got it, we were able to take our plate image and wrap some MAX trains up there, put them on bus placards, bus stops, bus benches. And it was great because I would talk to a lot of Portland residents and they said they saw our stuff everywhere. So good feedback on that. We also worked with the Portland Timbers and Timber Joey to do some spots for us focused on equipment use. That mascot, that guy, he carries a chainsaw around the stadium and he's cutting off the winning slice. So it just made sense to use our partnership with them and ask Timber Joey to do some spots for us. They have a huge loyal following up in Portland. And now that they won the Western Conference final this past weekend, they host the MLS Cup this Saturday. This really puts the spotlight on Oregon, and it's a great opportunity for us to continue that partnership with them. And then we also, I'm going to turn on my camera here really quick because I want to show you that we did a partnership with 6 top wineries up here. Can you guys see that label?
Yeah.
It's a Keep Oregon Green Pinot Noir. We're really excited about that. We're hoping maybe we could do something like that with some wineries down in your area, but it allows us to reach out to different businesses and create some different partnerships that reach different sectors, different audiences. And it just helps us grow our brand that much more and help us reach folks with the fire prevention message. This is a special 2020 Pinot Noir. As we know, because of the wildfires in 2020, the wine sector was incredibly impacted by smoke taint. You guys know this down in Southern Oregon. When grapes are sitting in smoke, the finished product can taste like an ashtray. And there's a lot of work to do on the back end to clean all that up. Lots of different ways to do that. But, this is a great opportunity for us to protect that industry as well. And our Pinots are very valued here in Oregon. We're known around the world for our Pinots. So this is a great partnership that we're able to get our logo on that can. Today, I should get some B-roll for some work that we did in this past June. The West Oregon District, we got together with the landowner there, lit a big burn pile on fire, and we were able to get some drone footage get some fire crews on site and shoot some B-roll around debris burning. And we hope to turn this into a longer educational video that can be used for some other things that we have upcoming, but could be edited down to for shorter, 2-minute down to 30-second commercials. I can also hand that B-roll off to news stations and they can use it for focused work that they're doing as well to help us prevent wildfires. We've also got some Spanish translated spots that are going to be up and coming for spring. Company up here in Hillsborough is helping us with that. We've got 6 different spots that we're working on, from smoking to debris burning to vehicles, et cetera, that will all be translated into Spanish. And they've got all the B-roll for that too. So we're very excited about being able to reach out to some a new segment of our population here in Oregon. And then the comic book that I've been talking about, feels like forever. We finally were able to get that done and printed. I have all of the boxes here in my office. I really hope that, we'll be able to do some face-to-face outreach events here in the coming year. We'd really like to get that into kids' hands. And then eventually I'm working now to put together an RFP and get that comic book and the characters developed into a website for youth, an interactive educational website. The KOG Ranger program will go away and it will be replaced by something new. And then last, I just wanted to say that we've decided on the contest winners for the Smoky Bear Billboard, Keep Oregon Green Billboard contest. That closed in August, and we were able to get together a little panel of folks and make those decisions. And so we've contacted our first, second, third place winners in each of those divisions to let them know that they won and they got some cash prizes out of that. And then the first place winners, so there'll be 3 of those art entries that will be up on billboards around the state. They were really excited to hear that they won, and especially the young one. So it's really exciting to be able to share that with folks. The whole idea was that, we wanted to reach out to the public and have them be a part of the prevention solution. So that was a win-win. Not sure if we'll do that again in the coming years, but we'll have it out there as an idea to return to every once in a while. But with that, I will entertain any questions that you have. And that's the end of my report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Kristen? Okay, not hearing any. We'll move on. Sodia, Mr. Schott, do you have anything to add?
Like to echo what Colleen and Kristen said about appreciation and thanks for what ODF did last summer and what they do every summer. I do have a couple concerning statistics to relate for your educational well-being. The Rogue River Siskiyou and the Metro District of the BLM grows approximately annual growth 1.2 to 1.3 billion board feet every year. Staggering number. The average for the last 20 years, annual cut off those 2 combined forests have been less than 5% of annual growth. We have had such a huge increase in what is now basically fuel for our concerns, for fire concerns. And we don't have any appreciable infrastructure left. We have no sawmills left in Southwest Oregon. You have to go to the coast to find one at South Coast, or you have to go to Klamath Falls to find one, Thomas Lumber, and that's it. So we have 2 plywood mills using our existing timber supply in Southwest Oregon. Some of it does go up north if it's decent logs, but not enough to really make an impact. So we are destined, unfortunately, to have more and more growth and unfortunately bigger and more fires. And that's just a caution for everyone to know what's going on down here because it's getting worse and worse and worse. There's no solution at this time. I don't think it's solvable. I think we are destined, unfortunately, at this time to have bigger and more fires. And without infrastructure, we can't do anything about it. We will have to protect individual towns, Ashland, Jacksonville, Grants Pass, probably with some system of fire breaks, opening up Forest Service, BLM, private timberland roads, contiguous areas. It's just a real concern. And having been born and raised here, many, many years ago, I was born here. It's a real concern. And that's just for your own edification. And you know where the real problem lies now. So with that, again, thanks for everything you do. You're phenomenal. It's great to see that Oregon has at least one department that rises above and beyond. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Any questions for Mr. Schott? Okay, not hearing any. We'll move on to OSWA. Mr. Meredith, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, Dave, the only thing I've got is that OSWA is still having some leadership issues. Jim James has stepped back in to take over temporarily until a new director can be found. Hopefully we'll have a little more stability next year. That's all I've got.
All right, thanks, Mike. BLM, Natalie.
Good morning, folks. This is Matt Watson. I'm the Assistant Fire Management Officer here at BLM, and I'm speaking for Natalie today and several other folks. Just like to say good morning, and to start off, we'll tell you about we have a few personnel changes at the moment. With the top is Jen Smith is detailed as our district manager, and Kyle Sullivan is detailed as her deputy district manager. Natalie will be retiring December 31st. Hate to see her go, but she said she's still going to be around, and going to really miss her positive energy and knowledge of this job. And like I said, I'll hate to see her go. During 2021, we also added a trespass mitigation technician who's helping us in coordinating with any of our trespass fires with ODF. We're also looking at adding a fire operations technician to help out as well with some of our operations, crew type stuff, cash type stuff, things like that. I want to say congratulations to Tyler. Really great working with you. Been a pleasure, and looking forward to it here in this coming fire season. Last fire season was, I'm pleased and grateful for the hard work and good results. And, the additional severity resources provided by Forest Service and ODF, I think really helped us with having that pretty successful fire season that we did, keeping those fires small. We also had great coordination and with our partners and public and industrial fire restrictions. I think that played a big part too. Try to keep things pretty simple, less confusing for the public to know what's expected of them. And most folks want to do what's expected of them. All in all, we had some great communication this last year and cooperation, and looking forward to the next year. Thanks. Any questions? I'm open.
All right, not hearing any questions from Matt. Thank you. We'll move on to Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest. Dan.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Dan Quinones. I'm the Fire and Aviation Staff Officer for the Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest. Quick bio on myself to fall in line with Tyler's intro earlier on in the meeting. I took position as the Fire and Aviation Staff Officer this January 1. So first full year and first fire season in that position. And yeah, I think it worked out pretty darn well. So again, congrats, Tyler. Well deserved. Looking forward to many more years working alongside of you. Let's get into some fire stats for us. So we went into the year with some leaders' intent directed to our fire and aviation assets of quick detection, aggressive initial attack, and efficient use of our resources. So we started off this spring by adjusting our run cards. Those are our fire response cards for high and extreme indices. When we go into Smokey's Arm getting elevated, we wanted a more robust initial attack response, specifically to aircraft. We know that aircraft Type 1 assets specifically are our bread and butter down here for getting those fires knocked down. So we turned an eye to that quickly. We also brought in additional public information officer support to share our story and what we're doing. Wanted to make an effort to that so the community that we live and work in know what we're about. Also like to make a shout out to Natalie Weber. The coordination we've had with her and the ODF shop has been excellent. We enhanced the use of our lightning strike data for reconnaissance and patrol areas that paid dividends specific to the bear camp fires. If you folks recall, normally we look at a smoke report. Well, those fires were actually detected by the strike data that we got on our systems, and we investigated them, and lo and behold, we had some fires that we got on quickly. So good work by all there as well. With that, we worked extended shifts, some in excess of 24 hours on fires to ensure that we had containment and it was reached quickly. Don't want to mess around with anything we have to go put out. If the desire is to put out a fire, which it is, we want to get on it and do it quickly. That resulted in a total of 62 fires to date for 53.55 acres. 31 of those were lightning caused, 31 were human caused. Some fires of note that we had on our forest, the Josephine fire early on outside of Cave Junction, that was our largest, 22 acres. Went down from there to the Maple Dell fire down on our Siskiyou Mountains Ranger District. That was held at 10 acres. And the Bear Camp fire that I just mentioned on our Wild Rivers Ranger District, that was 4.5 acres. So if you're keeping track, 60 of our 62 fires were held at 4.5 acres or less, which is a great catch. Our Siskiyou Repel crew, based out of Grants Pass, Oregon, responded to 22 initial attack fires in remote areas across the region, and also hosted several of those Type 1 helicopters that we've been hearing about, with an emphasis on local initial attack in Southwest Oregon. We had the surge aircraft option, which was an additional Type 1 in addition to our exclusive use Type 1. And although it was a challenge to find folks qualified to manage those assets with the drawdowns and supporting incident management teams, et cetera, we said yes early on without hesitation that we did want to accept that asset and we would find a way to manage it, fund it, and staff it, which we did. So good kudos to those folks that helped us out with that. Also, our Medford Air Tanker Base supplied 1.3 million of gallons of retardant to large fires within their operating area. So good work as support function also. At our peak, we had north of 400 firefighters and direct support staff for initial attack, patrol, and enforcement on our forest. We had resources come help us from as far away as Alaska. We got an engine put on a barge to head down from Alaska, and we had engines, dozers, et cetera, come from as far away as Florida as well. And we had a strong support from our local contractor community, which can't go unrecommended. We historically request and receive approximately $1 million of fire severity funds each year to make this happen. And our regional office has been nothing but supportive in allowing us those funds so that we can continue to operate at a high level as we have been, knowing that our standard forces that we have across the forest are limited at best. We also hosted all these resources to put out fires while having an excellent safety record, something else we're proud of. I would say that our relationships in Southwest Oregon, as mentioned, were key to our success in keeping fires small and protecting the communities that we all live and work in. So I know that there's been some requests for comments of how folks felt that we were successful. This would be the one that I would hone in on. When you look at Tyler, when you look at Natalie, and hopefully when you look at myself, you understand that we work in concert and it's working very well, and all of our support staff are in line. So let's move on to fuels. Putting fires out quickly during the fire season is obviously critical. It's also critical that we apply fire and treat fuels during the cooler and wetter times of the year. The Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest has an assigned 6,500 acre target for our lands for both prescribed fire and mechanical treatments. And in FY21, we exceeded that target to just over 10,000 acres treated. So far in fiscal year 22, which is since October 1, we've completed over 2,200 acres of prescribed fire alone across our 5 districts in strategic areas in alignment with our goals. And I'm looking to increase efficiencies further to accomplish additional acres. So I did hear some comments and concerns about the amount of woody debris we have on our lands. We'll elevate that again to my forest supervisor. It's not new news. It's not news that we really want to have conversations about, but we do need to recognize it, move forward, and understand what we can do to help out with the communities that we have here in our protection. I'll just close out with just a huge thank you to all who helped us in making last year a success across Southwest Oregon, and also for those of you who are recognizing the hard work and dedication across all agencies and partners. So it's the end of my report and be available for any questions. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Any questions for Dan? Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you, Dan, and congratulations on your low fire year this year also. That's always greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
ODF and W, Mark Vargas, do you have anything to add?
Just real briefly, Dave, thank you, appreciate it. Congratulations, Tyler. Looking forward to continue working with you. It's good you got that job. You know, just a couple minor things really, real quick. Our agency is broken into fish and wildlife staff. A lot of you know that. You know, this past year, our fish staff has been working quite a bit on a lot of that in the Bear Creek area with leftover stuff from the burn, large woody debris and what have you. And they're working quite a bit, recognizing the safety issues about these trees that are still standing, the large cottonwoods, what have you. But also recognizing, you know, the benefit that the fish would have with structure in the streams and what have you. And I know the city of Central Point, I think, wants to remove all the cottonwoods that are a hazard issue. And I think our agency's meeting with them this week to try to negotiate a balance between fisheries needs as well as human safety. And then Steve Niemela, he's our district wildlife biologist. I think he's meeting, I think there's a meeting with the Society of American Foresters coming up pretty quick. He's going to give an update on the wolves locally where we're at here now. So I think that's about it. I just wanted to give a quick update. Us, like the state forestry and other state agencies, have been dealing with you know, COVID mandates, and it's been trying on all our agencies with differences of opinions and different beliefs, and it's testing all of us. And I just ask for more patience with my staff, and I'm sure Tyler's asked the same thing of his staff. So anyways, good talking to the group. That's all I had. Appreciate the invite to chat and update. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. And the only other thing that I would add is in your packet of materials, OHA also provided some information on things they're working on. Feel free to visit that in your free time. With that, we'll move into new business, and I'll hand it back off to Tyler to discuss some things that he'd like to talk to the group about.
You want to take a quick 5 and I'll get the PowerPoint presentation loaded up.
It sounds like we'll take a quick 5 and Tyler will get the PowerPoint presentation ready for everybody in about 5 minutes. So about 11:20. So, Ms. Streeter. Oh, yeah.
And I've been working on
These videos, it's like, you know, there's kind of that dead space and stuff.
Very.
Really, that's down.
I was like, is somebody planning to move in there? The bed is here now.
Yeah.
That's It's like, yeah, it's all good. It was funny because, you know, our biggest fire was 60 acres, so I never felt like I was that, you know, assigned to anything, but all of July, I only had. Yeah, that's great. Pretty great.
Yeah. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with fire, summer is your busy time.
Yeah.
Your life.
Kind of like when you work for ODF, you know, your hunting season is probably busy.
Yeah, exactly. But it was fun. Great with this guy, so.
Can somebody please tell me
The
we're
week after.
recording this and somebody's gonna send that into
Well,
ridiculousness
she's
or
already.
America's Funny Home Videos?
I think it
What
was
was
her,
it?
her phone vibrating.
Oh, the.
Yeah.
I don't know what that
I
was.
don't-
I can tell you what I thought it was.
Yeah. It was pretty fun. I've already notified Heidi
right, we got everybody back online here. We'll have Tyler give us a couple quick presentations.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Let's see if I can advance this slide. Oh, little delay. Hold on just a second. Okay, trying this again. Maybe. Really delayed. Give me just a sec. We'll get it figured out. Okay. So like has been brought up multiple times throughout this presentation, we got an influx of position authority to the district. And so with the SB 762 funding and position authority that we received through the legislature, we were able to add an assistant district forester position. We originally received funding for these positions through the legislative e-board. And so we actually brought somebody on in a limited duration or job rotation assignment, which was Matt Famazi to fill that assistant district forester position. Unfortunately, he has to go back and compete again for it because it was made permanent. And so the application process was open for that position. It's now closed, and I'll be scheduling interviews here this week for that job. And so that's a position that we're going to be adding here shortly. We also were able to add a fiscal analyst. This is actually a position that we've had on the district for a while now. When we moved to the Western Oregon operating plan, it was realized by Dave Larson that we needed somebody to really hone in on our cost shares and our billings to the BLM. And so Karen Jarrett has actually been here for almost a couple of years now, and she was in a temporary capacity. And so we've actually received position authority and funding for that position, which will actually probably take a little bit of a workload or a little bit of a cost off of the district in our rates because it's not being funded entirely by landowners. We've also added 2 administrative specialist positions in the admin department. We've kind of separated out payroll. We've been dealing with a couple of new payroll systems, Workday, which is actually our HR system, and e-payroll. And the amount of workload that it created on our payroll folks, it was realized that we need to separate those duties. We need to have somebody that focuses on payroll and somebody that focuses on fire finance. And so we've broken those out. And our 2 admin specialists the 2 admin specialists, 2 positions that we added are focused on exclusively fire finance. And like Ron mentioned earlier, we're having to process a lot more payments than we have in the past. This season was an exception because we were really successful at initial attack. But if you look back to the 2013s, 2014s, 2017 fire seasons, and 18 and 20, those were all taxing to our admin staff. So that's going to relieve a little pressure there. We also added a fire planner position. This is actually a position that we had in the past, but went away a while back due to budget cuts. And so we're bringing that back. It's somebody who's focused on prevention, somebody who's focused on making sure our pocket cards are updated, and is also going to be dealing a lot with grants and applying for grants, administering grants, those types of activities. As well as historically, we've had a heavy equipment mechanic on the district, and they, with the amount of fleet and the amount of vehicles that we have and have to maintain and ensure up and running during fire season, it was definitely recognized that we need another audit tech so that we have one on each unit of the district. And these are our folks that help out our logistics when we have fires. Our larger type 3 incidents are the ones that are coordinating the inmates that we bring in, working with our vendors, making sure we get porta potties out to the sites, making sure that the firefighters are getting fed. So it's definitely going to be a welcome addition to the crew. As well as, and this says we're going to be bringing on 3 seasonal forest officer, or we're going to be making 3 seasonal forest officer positions permanent. So we have existing seasonal positions. We've got just the extra FTE added to 3 positions to be able to make those positions permanent. And actually what we're going to do down the line is we're actually going to be taking 2 of those and we're going to be making them wildland fire suits. But that is going to take a little bit longer. And so we'll have an even mix. We'll have 2 permanent forest officers on each unit, as well as 3 wildland fire suits. Our supervisor ranks are way out of their span of control for the number of employees that they're supervising. It's like, I don't know, 30-1, which is way out of span of control. So this is bringing that more back into what is acceptable. And it's also, I mean, if you look at what a forest officer makes compared to a wildland fire supervisor, forest officer is more expensive. And so in the end, it's going to work out better for the district. So that's where we're currently at. So these 2 are in the hopper, the assistant district forester and the fiscal analyst, and those should be hired here shortly. The rest of the positions, we're waiting on our HR department to go through the process. We have to go through a position description review through DAS, which is honestly, I don't agree with. We have these positions already in our ranks. I don't know why we have to do it, but I guess it's part of the process. One complaint for the day. Also, we received $300,000 for detection cameras. And so we're eyeing a couple of different locations, Vestal Butte north of Eagle Point, as well as King Mountain. We have an existing FEMA grant at that location. And so the amount of funds we're going to need to get something on it on King Mountain is going to be relatively cheap. I think it's in the realm of like 20 grand we'll have to put out, because it's going to be matched 75% by FEMA funds. As well as we're going to be looking at some other sites as well. But we were waiting for our ISS-2, the detection lead, to get back. He was deployed during the COVID deployments with National Guard, got deployed to the local hospitals. So he was there for the last 2.5 months. So now that he's back, we're going to really start figuring out where we're going to go. And we're working through some approval processes for Vestal Butte with the PLM. In addition to the camera funding, I mentioned earlier that we got 3 vehicles, totaled $120,000 that we got by those 3 rigs. So that's where we're at with Senate Bill 762 and implementation locally. And I'm going to move right into a discussion on hand crews and the Type 1 helicopter. This has been brought up already multiple times throughout this morning. Just to kind of highlight where we're at locally with severity resources. So the Grants Pass helicopter is severity funded. The large air tanker is severity funded. Then we've got the hand crew and Grants Pass Crew 1. It's 12 individuals. It's been a really successful program. If you look at what severity budgets for that crew, I think it's in the realm of $250,000 a year. We've been, this last summer, we spent I think it was $50,000 total, because the majority of those costs are being coded to fires. And so it's really a huge benefit. And then as well as we've got the couple helitack positions as well. And so, Ron, I don't know if you can hear me, but this is kind of my pitch to you. This last year, and it was because of reasons beyond our control that we didn't get a Type 1 helicopter. But we built a program. You guys gave us 3 additional e-board positions or severity funded positions. And we built a program to bring in a Type 1 helicopter that would eventually be night capable. I truly believe that nighttime firefighting and a night capable Type 1 would make a huge difference here locally and statewide. And so I don't know if it's even in the realm of possibility that we could get one in 2022, but we're poised and ready to take that on and see that program be successful. As well as wanting to put in the pitch that those 3 individuals that you gave us this last year to manage that Type 1, we integrated those into our system here. Whether it was managing helicopters, severity helicopters around the state, or whether it was supporting our helitack crew and the training that we're doing for all those individuals across the state. It really gave our district the flexibility to be able to implement those programs. And so I don't know if there needs to be much discussion. I just want recognition that we want to see that down here in Southwest. And whether it's this next year or it's the year after that, we're ready to do it. Lee, you got anything to add on type 1?
No, you know, all of the severity positions we were given for our helitac, I want to say we were right about maybe a third of the funding actually came out of severity. They were off on district extended attack. They were off on statewide extended attack missions. They managed the National Guard to get folks to a helicopter manager, fully qualified, nationally recognized interagency standard. Takes several years. And so we were able to get folks there because of past experience we have here in the district, and would hate to see those folks kind of reset this next year if those positions aren't funded. Those are our comrades, and we want to keep them plugged in and utilize their expertise, you know, for years to come.
All right, so the other issue is hand crews, and it was discussed, Shannon specifically brought it up, that we get into these, the grip of fire season, and there's fires on the landscape. Last year was bootlegging Cougar and the fires to the north of us, and those suck up all the resources. I truly believe that ODF needs crews, our own crews, around the state. And if you think about it, right, as an association, we budget for adequate level of protection on our district. But when we get into those large fire scenarios, there almost needs to be, I think I'm kind of quoting Ron Graham in a meeting recently, that there almost needs to be a look at the adequate level of protection for the state as well. And I don't know the funding mechanisms or how you do it, but I truly believe that we need to start investing in hand crews, at least 5 scattered around the state that we can mobilize and control when we get into those large fires. I also, this last summer, being a deputy IC on some of the fires last summer, one of the main issues we dealt with is the inability to get middle management on our fires. We struggled. In fact, I can give you a prime example. The Lewis Rock fire, had the district been able to get middle management there from around the state, that fire team never would have been flew to. They caught that fire 3 days in a row. And in the afternoons, because of lack of span of control and having inexperienced type 2 crews, they lost it every afternoon. And eventually they were just so tired, they ended up calling an incident management team. So I think if we start building these crews, we can start building our middle management in our organization, which in the end is going to help us. So there's a lot of different reasons on why we need hand crews around the state. Like I said, mentioned earlier, we've proven through that crew 1 that we can do it, and we can do it cost efficiently. And so Ron, here's my other pitch to you. If we can get another 8 people for that crew, we would be more than happy to host them and make that a full 20-person crew to start. Moving on. This is the old business. Are you okay with more support with this? And then,
Yeah, does anybody have any questions over Tyler's presentation on those 2 subjects? If not, we'll have him move on to some old business. Okay, not hearing any, we'll move on.
all right, so at the spring board meeting, Dave Larson brought a proposal to you guys about adding 6 additional engines to the district. So I think kind of our plan moving forward is, and the main issue that we have, right, is we can't add positions to the district unless we have legislative approval, right? You guys locally determine what the adequate level of protection is, but without position authority from the legislature, I can't add anything. And in the past, when you look back in the past, we did it, but we did it through a way that we probably shouldn't have, through double filling positions. And honestly, through some of this SB 762 funding, we cleaned all that up. And so if we were to go back down that path, it wouldn't look good. And so the soonest that we're going to be able to probably add any capacity as far as positions go, it's going to be 2023, because they typically don't take requests during short sessions for position authority, is my understanding. So, but to start this process, what we're planning to do is we're going to be building out a couple of different engines this season. And so what the plan is we're going to hold on to those old engines. Typically we would, when we replace an engine, we pull the bed off and we throw it on just a cab chassis. This time we're just going to roll that old engine and it's going to stay in the fleet. And then we're going to buy a cab chassis and then actually build out the back half. And so that's what we're going to start with this year. We're going to start with 2 engines and we're going to build them out. And so that's going to add, it's not going to be a staffed rig, but it's going to add an extra spare engine to each unit. And when we cancel days off, that's one more engine that we'll have available for lightning bus or red flag days. And I think it's the best option in the short term to be able to increase capacity. So that's the plan moving forward in the short term, unless there's any opposition from the board. And so that just kind of covers what I already talked about. So that's my.
Okay, any questions for Tyler on that subject? We had a pretty robust conversation about that in the springtime and kind of requested that they look into filling those needs that we all felt they had. So I guess that's an update on where we're at, where we're going.
Yeah, and I guess one other thing, I think the timing's going to work out about right too, because we've got this influx of funding like Kyle Williams talked about from SB 762, right? If it's not until 2023, you're going to have a pretty good idea of, or we are going to have a pretty good idea of what that potential funding issue means to the district, right? Because if you as landowners end up eating some of those costs from this SB 762 funding, right? So right now it's all general fund, but at some point in time, that might come back to you guys, at least part of it. And so that kind of delays that as well a little bit. Give us a little bit more situational awareness down the road.
Okay, not hearing a lot of questions. We can move on to the last old item, which is our RFPA bank account. I don't know that we need to have any sort of a vote or anything on this. I think it's pretty well known that we're unhappy with our current situation with Northwest Community Credit Union, and we'd like to do some research into changing over to another institution. Unless I hear any opposition, I guess my suggestion would be that we suggest that Mike Meredith go out on the board's behalf and do some research into some other institutions and then come back with some proposals on where we would like to switch to. And I think one of the biggest concerns we've been having is our ability to change account managers or signers as the board changes, is dynamic over time. It's very difficult to get Northwest Community to stay up with the times. So I guess I'd open it up to other suggestions, comments on that.
You know, it sounds really familiar to the Rogue Fire Chiefs Association. We change board members every year on that. We go with Wells Fargo. And you only need one existing board member to rep. And then the incoming, you know, someone that if it's new to the account and you're adding 3 people, they'd have to be there, but it takes us like maybe 30 minutes to an hour to meet there face to face with one of their account managers, and they switch it over, no cost. It's worked well. I don't know how long we've been with Wells Fargo, but it sounds like it might be a little better option than.
Mike, I kind of threw you under the bus. Any comments?
Yeah, no, I agree exactly with what you're saying. Northwest seems to be making our lives harder than it should be. Like Backen and I went in there after our April meeting and with Kurt Snow, and and sat around for 45 minutes and they didn't really get anything accomplished. And then they wanted a full credit report from each of us, which didn't make much sense to me. So anyway, yeah, I think that would be fine to research and find another institution. I'm not sure whether we need to wait until the next board meeting to take action on that. It's up, the pleasure of the association, whether we want to just go ahead and do that now, give that authority and do that now and take care of that now. I'm not sure who the signers are currently on the account. I believe Dave Erickson, of course, is the last secretary treasurer, so he'd probably still be on there.
I think I might be the only
I
active.
think you were the only active person.
At this time. I guess my expectation, I thought, would be that we find out, who you thought was the best place to go to meet our needs and the easiest place to be dynamic with our changing board. And then at that point, we could vote to move the money. I think that's probably a vote that needs to happen with the whole board.
So you're thinking next April?
We could call a de facto meeting before then, if you get some information available to us, either get it to myself or Tyler, and we can get it out to the board. We can call a quick meeting and take care of it. I think.
Okay. And then along those lines, we do have that CD is matured, and I don't know what the status of that is. It's probably gone to a non-interest bearing, I would guess, which really doesn't make much difference at the rates they're paying. And then the final thing that I would maybe throw out is, since we had no expenses, as far as I know, this year, because we didn't have a tour, and then we're accumulating dues, maybe we ought to consider waiving the dues next year, just so that we stay even.
So Mike, there is a couple of expenses that will show up in the December report, the final quarter report. One is for the Secretary of State's, I think it's the, what do you call it, nonprofit status, and as well as the mailings for the spring budget meeting. I think it is probably going to total about $300, but those will show up in December.
Not significant expenses, and I think we have plenty in the coffers. So I think at that next meeting, that would be a good question to bring up in the board to vote on that, to suspend those bills for the upcoming year. I've got no problem with that.
Okay.
Anybody else? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, with all that, then just to wrap up, unless there's something else, I'm happy to go do some research. I bank with Umpqua, and I'm very happy with them. They're a Roseburg-based bank, and I know the folks locally here. There's plenty of branches, so that or Wells Fargo or whatever the board. You have a strong feeling about one bank or another. I would prefer to be with a bank rather than a credit union, frankly.
I think personally, I'm okay if you want to do some research on a couple of trusted institutions and give us some feedback and go from there. Like I said, the big questions to me would be, can they accommodate our changing board without being a nightmare?
Yeah, exactly. And how many signers are these are required on this account by the bylaws? Are there two?
I think two or normally there's four. I think the president, vice president, secretary, and then I think our district business manager is typically on that as well.
Could be as many as four, Mike.
Okay.
With one constant, assuming the district business manager is a revolving door.
Yeah, correct.
Sorry.
We're hoping to keep Karen around.
Does that make sense to everybody? Any other comments? we'll wait to hear from you, Mike, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, and probably in some future meeting, we should talk about what kind of a balance we want to maintain in this account, whether it makes sense to keep a $15,000 balance, or we ought to whittle it down somehow or waive dues or whatever.
Yeah, agreed. And I think one of the reasons is we try to keep 10 for the arson fund, don't we?
Yeah, is it 10 or 5?
I don't know what you guys keep in there. I've never been privy to that, but you can change, you can set it as you see fit. What arson award you guys as an association want to do. So it makes sense for, if you've already got over 10, to keep that, in my opinion.
Let's definitely revisit those bylaws and discuss them once you come up with some information for us.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you. Do we have anything else for the good of the order? I'll give a couple extra seconds for those that are slow on the unmute. All right, not hearing any. Unless anybody has anything else to add, I say we bring this to an adjourn and everybody can go get themselves some lunch or get back to doing something productive. All right, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.